Hello everyone and welcome back. This is a new series of videos that I will be starting on my channel that will be reporting on updates on true crime cases. We're also going to talk about maybe some new things that are coming to light, discoveries, science, and all those things that I feel like the popular media outlets don't really share 100% of this, especially when it's true crime related. But at the same time, I feel like there are some outlets that are more credible, in my opinion, like the Associated Press website. And that's where I will be getting most of my information, and specifically the information that I will be sharing with you today. Now, I was doing research about the Golden State Killer. This was a serial killer back in the 70s, and today I read that they captured the guy, that they have DNA evidence that link this person, that he was living in the area, he was working in the area, and I mean, everything matches, even the sketch. Of course, this is an older guy now, and I'm going to tell you more about him, but I'm going to give you a little idea of what he did and, how he's well known or, known for. Now, the Golden State Killer is a serial killer, a serial rapist, and a serial burglar who committed 50 rapes in Northern California during the mid-1970s and murdered 12 people in Southern California from 1979 through 1986. So I feel like, this was the kind of guy that was getting very comfortable with the idea that he was getting away with it. So he was kind of moving from, a burglar to a rapist and then to a serial killer. Okay. He started as the East area rapist, and he's believed to have started as a prolific burglar known as the Visalia Ransacker. My goodness, so many names for this guy. Before later moving to the Sacramento area and progressing to rape. His initial modus operandi was to stalk middle-class neighborhoods at night, creepy, looking for women who were alone in a single-story home, usually near a school, a creek, a trail, or other open space that afforded a quick escape. He was spotted on a number of occasions, but sprinted away upon detection. On one occasion, a youth who closely pursued him was shot and seriously wounded. Most victims had seen or heard a prowler on their property before the attacks. I mean, how creepy. And many had suffered break-ins. Police believe the offender had a pattern of using extensive recon tactics on several homes in a target neighborhood before selecting one for attack. So he would go into the people's houses and kind of see, kind of walk around and see what they had, if he could get away with it, kind of plan the whole thing before actually going in and doing whatever he was doing to the people that was living in the house. So it wasn't even the first time, when he got in the house. Every time he's been there before. As part of his extensive surveillance, the offender was known to peep in the windows of future victims and prowl in the yards of homes for several nights prior to attacking. On a few occasions, it is believed that in the run-up to attacks, the offender entered the homes of future victims to conduct, again, this recon of the area. He would unlock windows, unload guns, and plant binding ligatures for future use. So, this sounds like a very creepy, scary movie. He would get in the houses, get everything ready. So, he knew exactly where he needed to get out of or from, get in, and I mean, not only that, but he knew where everything was going to be. If they had guns, get rid of the bullets and just plant his own guns all over, or things that he was planning to attack with. He would also frequently call the future victims leading up to the attack, sometimes for months in advance, to better understand their daily schedule and routines. Wow. On those calls, he would sometimes hang up, sometimes pretend to have the wrong number, and sometimes, in calls placed after the attack, threaten to harm the victims again. In one of these calls, which was recorded by the victim in January of 1978, the offender repeats, "Gonna kill you." My goodness. They just couldn't track the number or something like that? This sounds very creepy. Now, although he originally targeted women either alone in their homes or with children, the offender later came to prefer attacking couples instead. Yeah, he was getting away with one. Why not start with two? Then his standard procedure was to break in through a window or a sliding door and then awaken the sleeping occupants with a flashlight while threatening them with a handgun. My goodness. Victims were then bound with ligatures, often shoelaces that he used, that he found or brought with him to the crime scene, followed by blindfolding and or gagging the victims with towels that he had taken from the residence and ripped into strips. The female victim was usually made to tie up her male companion first before being tied up in turn. In many cases, these bindings were made so tightly that the victims had no feelings in their hands for hours after they were untied. He would then separate the couple, often stacking dishes on the back of the male. Oh, stacking dishes on the back of the male? I didn't read that before. That sounds crazy. Stating that if he heard the dishes rattle, he would kill everyone in the house. Goodness gracious. He would then relocate the female to the living room and often rape her repeatedly, sometimes over the course of several hours. So he would torture the man by, doing this to the wife or girlfriend, and my goodness, this guy is serious problems. The offender at times spent hours in the home, ransacking closets and drawers, eating food in the kitchen, drinking beer, raping the female again, and then returning to utter more threats to the victims, who were often unsure as to whether he was still in the home. In some instances, the victims believed he had left and began to move, but he then jumped from the darkness. So he was also, oh my goodness, how creepy. The offender typically stole items from the victims as well. Okay, and I think that's how they got him too. Often selecting personal objects and items of minimal monetary value. So it was more like trophy things that he would collect. However, he did steal cash and firearms also. The offender would eventually leave in a stealthy fashion, and victims were usually unsure as to whether or not he had left at all. Again, he was very sneaky. He was believed to escape on foot through a series of yards and then use a bicycle to travel home or to a car. He also made extensive use of parks, schoolyards, can you believe that? Creek beds and other open spaces that allowed him to stay off the street. So he was prowling pretty much everywhere. Now, you have an idea of the kind of guy that this is. And I'm gonna put a picture in the thumbnail because this looks like a sweet old grandpa. I would have never guessed that he was the one, but I'm gonna tell you his story. Now, a man once sworn to protect the public, and this is from the Associated Press website, from crime was accused Wednesday of living a double life, terrorizing suburban neighborhoods at night. So he was a police officer during the day, and he was terrorizing people at night, becoming one of the California's most feared serial killers and rapists in the 1970s and 80s, before leaving a cold trail that baffled investigators. A former police officer, Joseph James D'Angelo, and that is now he's 72, he was arrested at his home Tuesday after DNA linked him to crimes attributed to the so-called Golden State Killer. And he initially was charged with 8 counts of murder and could face dozens more charges, the authorities said. The culprit, also known as the East Area Rapist, remember we talk about that too, among other names, is suspected of at least 12 slayings and 50 rapes in 10 counties from northern to southern California. The armed and masked prowler sneaked in through windows at night and surprised sleeping victims who range in age from 13 to 41. When encountering a couple, he was known to tie up the man and pile dishes on his back. Again, kind of what I mentioned before. He threatened to kill both victims if he heard plates crash to the floor while he raped the woman. He then ransacked the house, taking souvenirs, notably coins and jewelry, before fleeing on foot or bicycle. Despite an outpouring of thousands of tips over the years, D'Angelo's name had not been on the radar of law enforcement before last week. Sacramento County District Attorney Anne Marie Shuvert said, "We knew we were looking for a needle in a haystack, but we also knew that needle was there," she said. "It was right here in Sacramento. A break in the case and the arrest came together in light speed during the past 6 days," Schubert said, though authorities refused to reveal what led to D'Angelo. Remember, this is an ongoing investigation. They need to have everything, ready for the trial. So they're not going to reveal all the information, even if we want to know more about it. It just wouldn't make sense because they need all that proof, and they don't want, the lawyers and, kind of mess with what they're working with. Sacramento Sheriff Scott Jones said detectives with dogged determination were able to get a sample of DNA from something D'Angelo discarded. Wow, pretty sneaky. I like them. Though he wouldn't say what the item was. The genetic material was not a match, but there were enough similarities for investigators to return for more, and they said they were able to get a conclusive match. So, again, they're not telling you that much. They're just telling you that it did take them some time. You get a sample, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's enough, sometimes it's not. And you just have to have the right amount. You just have to know exactly that was something that he was using and whatever. Were they going through the garbage? We're not sure, but more than likely. After watching D'Angelo for several days, deputies took him by surprise Tuesday. It looked as though he might have been searching his mind to execute a particular plan he may have had, but never had time to act, Jones said. So maybe this guy kind of knew that they were investigating him, or he could tell. I mean, he must be us. This isn't gonna sound bad, but he must be a smart guy, or at least he kind of knew how to get around. So maybe he did know that they were investigating him, but he didn't have time, or he didn't actually do it before he was arrested. Who knows what he was planning, though, or why the police think that he knew. D'Angelo was arrested on suspicion of committing double killings in Sacramento and Ventura counties, and later charged with 4 counts of murder in Orange County, officials said. Well, that is just to start with, right? Because he's done a lot. If he is, in fact, the killer. Ventura County District Attorney Gregory Totten said that before prosecutors decided whether to seek the death penalty, there will be a solemn and formal death review process that typically takes many months before a decision is made. And they're pretty serious. I mean, they charged them and everything, but it's kind of it made it seem like they have a lot of evidence that will put him as the one, because otherwise they wouldn't be saying all this death penalty kind of thing. D'Angelo, who served in the Navy, was a police officer in Exeter in the San Joaquin Valley from 1973 to 1976. At a time, a burglar known as the Visalia ransacker was active, Jones said. He transferred to the Air Force in Auburn in the Sierra foothills near where he grew up, outside Sacramento. About 50 crimes, including 2 killings, were attributed to the East Area rapist during 3 years. D'Angelo worked in Auburn. Okay, so every time he moved, the crimes would move with him. But Jones said it wasn't clear if any were committed while on duty. So they're not sure he was on duty while he was doing it, but they knew that while he was working and while he was doing that, maybe not, of course, not at the same time, but they're not sure the time there. D'Angelo was fired from the Auburn Department in 1979 after being arrested for stealing a can of dog repellent and hammer from a drugstore. He was for stealing a can of dog repellent? Really? I'm speechless. According to Auburn Journal articles from the time, he was convicted of the theft and fined with $100. 10 slaying occurred after he was fired, and all took place in Southern California. D'Angelo worked for 27 years in a distribution center for Save Mart supermarkets in Roseville, a Sacramento area suburb. He retired last year, said Victoria Castro, which is a spokesman of the Save Mart companies. And let me see here. None of his actions in the workplace would have led us to suspect any connection to crimes being attributed to him, Castro said in a statement, adding that the company was working with investigators. So it seemed like he was a pretty normal guy, at least to work with him. He didn't look suspicious. And I mean, if you look at his picture, he doesn't look suspicious, and he just retired a year ago. Although it's unusual for serial killers to stop, Jones said they have no reason to think D'Angelo continued to commit crimes after 1986, when the last rape and killing occurred in Orange County. We have no indication of any crimes with a similar or at least a close enough link to his MO and other things that he's done in the past to link him to anything from 86 on, Jones said. We just have nothing at this point. Jones said he always thought the rapist was alive, but might be in prison, which is something that happens a lot. Sometimes, that's how they find them, when they find DNA and kind of match it to people that is arrested or, they're in jail. They usually find them there, but, this was not the case. For the prosecutors and investigators, the arrest not only marked a significant professional achievement, but also a personal one that had touched the formative years in early careers. Alameda County District Attorney Nancy O'Malley was a college student volunteering at a rape crisis center and sat with survivors who had been assaulted by this guy. So this was pretty much something that she lived through, the time. The wave of horrifying crimes had brought an end to a more innocent era in the Sacramento suburbs, when children rode bicycles to school and played outside until dark and people didn't lock their doors, Schubert said. It all changed, said Schubert, who was 12 at the time. For anyone that lived here in the community in Sacramento, the memories are very vivid. You can ask anyone who grew up here. Everyone has a story. It seems like everyone was kind of scared of this guy. I mean, I would be. I know I'd be. I'd be pretty careful with my kids and, try to move from there right away. Totten said that he was a young law clerk in the office during the investigation into the 1980s slaying of Lehman and Charles Smith that struck terror in the hearts of Ventura residents. We had no idea this killer was connected to so many other crimes, Totten said. In 1999, Orange County Sheriff's homicide detectives were able to use DNA to link the Irvine slaying of Keith and Patrice Harrington to 9 other slayings in Orange, Ventura, and Santa Barbara counties. The genetic evidence was later used to connect the same suspects to dozens of rapes in Northern California. They were just putting it all together. Harrington's brother, Bruce, helped bankroll a successful 2004 ballot initiative campaign to take DNA from all convicted felons and some arrestees. To the victims, sleep better tonight. He isn't coming through your window, Bruce Harrington said at the news conference announcing the arrest. Jane Carson Sandler was one of the victims when she was sexually assaulted in 1976 in her home in Citrus Heights, the same community where D'Angelo was arrested at home. Oh my gosh, so he even lived close by this lady. She said she received an email Wednesday from a retired detective who worked in the case telling her they identified the rapist and he is in custody. I have been overjoyed, ecstatic. It's an emotional roller coaster right now. Carson Sandler, who now lives near Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, told the Associated Press in a telephone interview, I feel like I'm in the middle of a dream and I'm going to wake up and it's not going to be true. It's just so nice to have closure and to know he's in jail. FBI agents and other investigators were gathering evidence at D'Angelo's neatly kept home on Wednesday. Which makes sense. Not that neat people are going to be serial killers, but it would make sense because he was very meticulous while he was committing all these crimes. Jones said they were looking for mementos that may have been stolen from the victims. Neighbors said D'Angelo took meticulous care of his house, which was always perfectly painted, and his lawn was manicured. But he was known for an explosive temper and loud cursing. Kevin Tapia said when he was a teenager, D'Angelo falsely accused him of throwing things over their shared fence, prompting a heated exchange between D'Angelo and his father. No one thinks they live next door to a serial killer, Tapia said, but at the same time, I'm just like he was a weird guy. He kept to himself. When you start to think about it, if you're like, I could see him doing something like that, but I would never suspect it. Now, Melly reported from Los Angeles, Associated Press, and it has all the credits that I will have in the description box down below about the story and the people that wrote about it. I feel like I get more of the facts when I check this website, and I mean, it kind of explains everything perfectly and it connects to everything that we know about this serial killer. Again, he looks like a sweet grandpa, and I heard that he lived or was living at the time, or maybe the daughter was living with him, and the granddaughter. I also read that the granddaughter used to bring specifically a friend. He would give them rides back and forth. Um, the friend would spend weekends there, and nothing happened to her. I read that recently in another, I think it was in another post here on the same website. But it's just crazy to know that somebody who did all this, I mean, a burglar, a rapist, a serial killer, and then why did he stop? I mean, not that I'm complaining, because he did so many things that I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying, what made him stop? What happened through his mind? I wish that I can get more information, and I will do my research as soon as this case is closed. I remember that he needs to go to a trial, and he needs to be sentenced and everything, and maybe after all that is done, then the police will release the information that will make it clear in our minds. But just so you know, if you live in the Sacramento area and you heard about this, you can sleep better tonight knowing that even though he hasn't been doing anything recently, the person responsible for those scary 1970 and 1980s cases, he's behind bars. I also read in some other post that he said that he had a pot roast in his oven when he got arrested, and the police told him that they will take care of it. Mental illness? I mean, why would you worry? Why would you even remember that you have a pot roast in the oven? I am very, very curious about everything that the police have on this guy. And again, I do understand that they're holding all that information until there's a trial and until he's been convicted and sentenced. And I do get it, but I just feel like at least it's closure to something, and I will continue to keep my eyes open for this kind of cases, and this one in particular, and I will do a full video once we know how they connected this guy, because again, the police is not saying how they connected this guy to the killings and the rapings, the rapes, and I don't know. It's just I wish I knew how they did it, but I'm glad they did. I'm glad that they never gave up. I'm glad that somebody was going through his garbage. That is a picture that I have in my head, and that's how they kind of got the DNA from this guy to match it to whatever they had. Remember that we would have to agree for a DNA, and I don't know if they didn't have enough or what, but I'm pretty sure that this guy knew that they were on to him, and I'm really grateful to the detectives and everyone that worked on this, because it doesn't matter if he's older now. If he in fact was the one who did it, then he needs to be put away. Even if you just can't get away with it. It needs to stop. And I hope that this is kind of a different kind of video where we have closure from the justice system, maybe not from other sources, but from the justice system. And it seems like they're very confident that he's the one, and that they actually waited for a long time to make sure that they had everything to not only arrest him, because remember, you can be a suspect, but to be arrested, they have to have something on you that will keep you in jail, because if they don't have enough, then they can't just do that. So I'm really glad that I can share this case with you guys. I feel sad for the daughter. I feel sad for the granddaughter. I'm sure that they either had no idea, or maybe the daughter knew, which I really doubt it. But if he was doing the right thing, if he worked all his life, if he stopped altogether, and he the family, knew a different guy, and then the people met back in the 70s and 80s. So it must be hard for them. So I'm wishing the family the best, and I hope that they can find the peace that they need at this time. I hope that we can find out if this person has some kind of mental illness, or if he confesses to something. But again, my thoughts and prayers are with the family, because no matter what he did, if they didn't know, and if he was being correct, or he wasn't committing any crimes, and he was trying to have a peaceful life, family life, it must have been a shock for the family too. So thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope that you enjoy this new series, and that you stay tuned. I have quite a few that I want to cover, and I don't know, we can always go back and have the true crime cases once a week, but then we can also have this that will give closure to some of the things that happened before, or that are going on right now in the news. I'll see you on my next video. Thank you for watching. Bye.